What up, what up, what up? Hey, everybody, hope you're doing well. Hey, I just want to let you know, I know everybody can't always support and donate to the podcast, but hey, if you can do a one-time donation, I put up a Buy Me a Coffee link in this description of the podcast. So if you go to the description of the podcast, it'll be at the bottom, and you can just go to that link, and you can buy me a cup of coffee, or two if you want. And that would just help support the show, and I can wake up a little bit more and bring you more info. So thanks for listening to the podcast. If you can donate, that would be much appreciated. And let's get on to the show. What up, what up, what up? Welcome back to Lockdown Universe, some of the bizarre, peculiar, and unheard of stories of UFO legend and paranormal lore. Welcome back, welcome back. Happy to be back. Hopefully you guys are doing excellent and taking care of yourselves. So today I want to talk to you guys about the Vatican and how it relates to alien existence, whether or not we're fighting some sort of holy war against a certain alien species, and why is the Vatican so special? And are they holding the truths about alien existence below the bricks outside of their very foundation? So, as many of you may have heard, I did a podcast a while back with about Emery Smith, talking about how he was sent to the Vatican to confirm this very bizarre aircraft that they had captured, and to try to find more information on it in the archives. As the Vatican has archives that date back hundreds of years, if not possibly thousands of years. So we'll preface it and then we'll go into kind of the details about the Vatican. So Emery, just for a quick recap, now this craft was unlike anything they had ever seen by the U.S. government. This thing was, he stated it actually looked like a PVC tetrahedron. So if you took a bunch of PVC pipe, right, for plumbing, and you made a tetrahedron out of it, that's exactly what it would look like. On top of that, he talked about the fact that this thing had a light inside of it, and then it would, when individuals would come close to it, it would glow, and then it would turn opaque. So you could kind of see through. You couldn't see all the way through it. It was like kind of like looking through a fogged window, if you will. So the U.S. government had no clue what this thing was. It just dropped out of the sky and like went into the forest, and they tracked it and they went and captured it. They're trying to figure out what it was. So Emery was sent over to the Vatican with a couple other researchers, and they took him in and they showed him around, but they didn't take him into the general archives, okay? They took him below, about 6 stories below, and then took him into the secret archives where there were machines behind these huge, I guess, cabinets that were made out of a glass metal. Now, it sounds weird, right? But it looked like glass, but it was actually made out of metal so that it could withstand a blast. But he stated that Emery saw all kinds of machines, all kinds of weapons. He didn't go into detail about the weapons. He also saw different artifacts he couldn't even put a name to. He also stated he saw some plexiglass-looking tablets that were in file in a line behind one of these cabinets, I guess you'd call it. I don't know what else to call them, containers, cabinets, because they were all part of one wall. So, like, if you think of like a mausoleum and how they have people apparently, buried on top of each other in a mausoleum, it's like that, but just with glass, and then instead of dead people, it'd be alien artifacts or potentially old ancient artifacts, as well as some very, very unique pieces like those plexiglass-looking tablets, almost like the Moses tablets where the Ten Commandments were carved into, but instead of stone being plexiglass. Or he wasn't sure. It just looked like plexiglass. The point is that the Vatican has multiple layers of libraries, and which library you get into depends on your security clearance. And why is the Vatican so special, right? Well, the Vatican, a lot of people have heard of the Vatican, and, honestly, I didn't know a whole lot about it. I wanted to do a little bit more research on it and find out a little bit more because I wasn't as educated as I wanted to be. So I did a little bit of research. Obviously, the Vatican's been around a long time. But what the interesting thing about the Vatican is that it's the smallest country in the world, and it's encircled with a 2-mile border with Italy. So it's very small. It only has 100 acres, and it's the smallest country. So it's got it's 1/8 the size of New York's Central Park. So you could fit 8 Vaticans inside Central Park. What's even weirder, though, is that the St. Peter's Basilica was built on top of a city of the dead. Imagine that. Okay, so this is the main portion of the Vatican, St. Peter's Basilica, was built on top of a Roman necropolis, or a city of the dead. Back in AD 64, okay, Emperor Nero, he wanted to shift blame from himself. He accused Christians of starting the blaze, and he executed and burned everybody at the stake, tearing them apart with wild beasts and crucifying them. Amongst those was St. Peter, a disciple of Jesus Christ. And so later on, they built this basilica on top of ancient burial ground with what they believed to be the tomb of St. Peter at its center. Now, isn't that fascinating? We all know that cemeteries or ancient burial grounds are haunted, man. They're always haunted. Native American burial grounds that you mess with or build something on top of, the building gets haunted. So isn't it interesting that they chose this site to build upon the Roman fallen? Okay. Not to mention St. Peter. So again, I don't want to get into too much religion, but I did think that, a few of those pieces are fascinating. The site itself, the Vatican website, if you actually look at it, it's kind of interesting. They actually put up dark secrets of the Vatican to entice you to come and visit and spend your money there. There's only 692 people that are actually quote unquote citizens of the Vatican, and most of them live abroad. But a few of the dark secrets about the Vatican is, number one, is that the chief exorcist of the Vatican performed 100,000 exorcisms. Interesting, right? When we talk about aliens and possible demonic possession, you got to talk about, these exorcists. It's very fascinating that they still do this to this very day. In 2018, BBC reported that the Vatican welcomed 250 priests from across the world to an annual workshop. There's also stories about how the Vatican helped Nazi war criminals escape Allied forces. They say it's a dark secret. They also say Vatican made money from the Holocaust. They're talking about how, in addition to helping escape thousands of Nazis from Europe, Vatican was also involved in smuggling Nazi loot, art, golf, and other property belonging to Jewish families. So, could some of the property inside the Vatican be from World War II? 100%. Could it be UFO stuff? 100%. Not all of it, but there definitely could be some stuff in there. Moving forward, they talk about how one of the conspiracy theories behind the Vatican is that some people think that they're hiding the fact that Jesus might not exist. Evidence of extraterrestrial life, which we're talking about today, and a few other things like the fact that the Vatican might be controlled by the Illuminati and that it might be home to a time machine, which we did a podcast on called the Chronovisor, which many people state that the Father Pellegrino Ernetti created, and they are one of the first institutions to actually have a vision device into the past. So, why is it that the Vatican is so interested in alien tech, old tech, all of this? all of this documentation. Now, a lot of people don't know this. There's 50 miles worth of bookshelves down there with books, a lot of them, hundreds of years old, documents going from king to king, from president to pope, from pauper to king. All this information about history, not just Christianity history, but history in general. And it's protected. This entire installation is protected by hired Swiss infantry or security guards. Now, that's one of the interesting things too, is that they specifically hired Swiss sentries as a mercenary force. So the Swiss Guard is recognizable by its armor, and colorful Renaissance era uniforms have been protecting the pontiff, or the Pope, which is the principal point behind the Vatican, is to protect the Pope and Catholic Christianity history. They've been protecting the Pope since 1506. The Swiss Guard has. That's when Pope Julius II came into play, and he hired the Swiss mercenary forces to be his personal protection. They continue to be their protection, and they only hire 18 to 30-year-olds. They are the world's smallest standing army, and they state that they appear to be strictly ceremonial, and its soldiers are extensively trained and highly skilled marksmen. Interesting. Nonetheless, going back to Emery Smith's story, why would they have documentation on UFO craft? One could make the argument that they're trying to gather all kinds of information because it may be directly related to Jesus Christ. Another argument could be made that they were trying to gather all information from history about any powers that be, whether they be Jesus or whether they be from outside of this planet. Or one could say that they're just gathering any information that could assist in the future. So, going back to what we were discussing previously, which was, are they protecting information stating that Jesus doesn't exist? Well, I think Jesus probably existed, but, what was he? Was he an alien? Was he the Savior? We don't know. But what is interesting is that Emery did go down there on a mission from the U.S. government to obtain information about this particular craft that looked like PVC. Now, that doesn't sound like it's made from God. But what they did find out is that the Vatican had information dating back to the 1600s, and then information dating back even farther that was written on vellum, animal skin, that had specific geometry related to this particular craft and physics. Okay, so the first book that was presented to them was from the 1600s, and it had an exact picture of the exact same craft. And they stated that whoever wrote it stated that they saw it, that it was there, that it didn't do anything, didn't have any engagement with it other than the same kind of engagement Emery had with it, which was it would turn opaque when you got near it, and then it would clear up as you went away, and it had a light in the center, and it looked like a tetrahedron. Then the ancient text that was written on vellum, that information was written by a Buddhist monk, and he wrote down all kinds of geometry related to this craft, physics related to the craft, and they took pictures of that. They got copies of both of the books. They didn't take the actual books. They weren't allowed to touch the books. Only Vatican proper employees were allowed to touch the books. And then they were able to bring that information back to the U.S. government so they could figure out what the heck this thing was. What they eventually discovered with that particular craft was that it had to be something that was sent here to be protective of the planet, and not necessarily for harming purposes or information gathering purposes, in any nefarious way. It was simply sent here to be protective, possibly of the environment, possibly to help our atmosphere, or possibly to assist us in ascension spiritually. It is fascinating, though, that the Vatican has had this information, and they only give it to certain people. They only give it to people who have the proper clearances and ask specifically for certain information. Now, if you and I asked to see this information, could we see it? Probably not, right? They'd be like, we're not going to risk our archives for you. We're not going to show you our secrets because secrets are power. And the Vatican's purpose is to maintain Catholic, specifically Catholic Christianity around the world. I don't know what else to say about this because, you can't go in there by force. You can't ask them nicely. They're not willing to give the information out, but they do have it. And it's not just that craft, right? That's not just like a needle in a haystack. They have miles of information about things from the sky, UFOs, alien inhabitants. They actually have equipment behind metal, translucent glass that was 6 stories high when Emery was there. He also stated that there were some sections that had 20-foot tall sections of something. He didn't know if it was craft or equipment or what. So when you look at things, and he's a scientist, he would probably be able to tell you what it is, even though he's more of a biologist. He'd probably be able to tell you, hey, that looks like it was an engine of some sort or a weapon of some sort. And a lot of these things he couldn't even tell you what they were. He did say that there were a lot of individuals that were going up on these like escalator or like level elevators that would go angular from diagonal from one side to another, from side to side, and be able to look inside and see what's inside these containers. And he stated there was a bunch of people doing this at the same time, and they were wearing like kind of your average clean room like attire. But he didn't know what they were doing. He didn't know why they were there. He didn't ask. It was another mission where you don't ask and you just go and you go do your mission and that's it and you get out. It was really, really, really interesting. If you're interested in it, go back, take a look at Emery Smith Goes to the Vatican. You'll find it. But I guess the further point of this particular podcast is the Vatican almost seems similar to like an international Area 51, where they have all this information. They're willing to have multiple different countries come in and look at their information. They're a country, so they're not just bound to the United States. They're not just bound to Italy. They're free to do whatever they need to do. There are certain rules and regulations in going there. You can't wear flip-flops. You can't go in with shorts. You have to go and you have to be dressed appropriately. So there's different rules and regulations, and there's a lot of secrets in there. But I think that it bears worthiness to do a little bit more exploration here on the Vatican, and I might do a couple more podcasts about it. Not right now, but I do want to kind of get into it a little bit more and get my knowledge base up. But I do think it's fascinating, those couple facts about it being built on a necropolis. That's creepy. And there's got to be, you wonder if there's some energy there, right? From all those dead spirits, if there's some energy there that they were harnessing. I know certain people don't believe in, or have their beliefs about Catholic priests being abusive and that kind of thing too. And, that's just another strange piece of this particular puzzle. Because, some people believe that the Pope might be a reptilian and that the whole Catholic Church is, run by reptilians. And then you got to wonder, well, if they're intentionally trying to harm individuals, then are they trying to reap the the loosh energy from that, and have they been doing the research to obtain, methodologies to control, the world through their religion, So I'm not against Christianity, not against Catholics or anything like that. I'm just speaking what other people have spoken about, and it is fascinating. There's a lot to it. But I think the Vatican is kind of your international Area 51, and it bears a lot of secrets. Let's say that, right? And they know a lot about powers, especially with exorcisms. And that's power, that's energy. And if they know how to manipulate powers and energy, and they have the chronovisor, which can look back in time, they can manipulate a lot of things. They might even be able to manipulate the past. They might have an actual time machine, not just a looking glass type technology, but capability to go back in time and change things. That would be interesting. That might be something for another podcast. But anyway, guys, thanks for listening. I apologize about the previous podcast. It had some recording errors, so I fixed that. So thanks for hanging in. There was something going on with the software. But anyway, I'm glad you guys stuck it out, listened in, and I appreciate you. Thanks for continually listening. Continue to take care of yourselves spiritually, physically, emotionally. Follow through on your hobbies and your goals and your dreams. And as always, continue to question the universe around you. There's a lot of stuff going on energetically. So take care of yourselves, and Lockdown Universe out.